Welcome to Virtual Society. I'm your host, Itamar, where we explore the art of Web3 gaming, community building, and much more. Today we have Megan Doyle. She's the product marketing director at Sequence, an all-in-one development platform for game developers in the Web3 space. We dived into the secrets of how to build a strong partnership and why it matters so much. We explored the metrics you should actually focus on when building in Web3, and Megan shared so many important insights during this conversation. So if you are building in Web3 as a developer, a founder, a community leader, or really anything else, this one is very much for you. Enjoy the episode. Welcome, Meg. Pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much for having me today. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, that's pretty much like our 5th or 7th or 18th time trying to record it, but we got there at the end.
I know. I feel like it's now written in the stars and it's going to be an explosive episode. So I'm very excited. Now we finally made it happen. So thank you.
Yeah, it's time and it's the right time for it. Amazing. So I want to dive straight into it because Sequence, as it says on your pitch and in your website, is an all-in-one development platform. What does that mean?
I think that's such an interesting question, even though it's so basic. Sequence is ultimately making it easier for any project, any game, any application to easily and simply integrate Web3 into their project. And if you are a creator or an artist or a game developer, it doesn't really matter what your profession is, but ultimately we're bringing everything under one roof, where in the past it used to be like fragmented systems and you might have had to go to 3 different service providers and you didn't know if they were compatible or if they would work together. There's always these challenging considerations that people would need to make. And Sequence is ultimately bringing that under one roof, making it so simple and making it easy to integrate Web3. And I think one of my colleagues articulates it very, very well. He says, you wouldn't build half a game on Unity and half a game on Unreal. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. It doesn't make sense. Players are going to get confused. The experience will not be great. And so we are really simplifying it, making it robust, and ensuring the best possible experience from one complete suite.
Why does that matter? Not only for obviously your clients and the end users, but why does it matter in the greater scope of Web3 and gaming?
Absolutely. I think I touched on it in the previous answer. It's the fragmentation of tools and the silos that previously existed. It was resource intensive, to have to do R&D, scope it out, do DD on different tool kits, whether they were compatible with one another. What is the price? What's the development cost? What's the integration timeline? Who's managing it? Do we have to have specific specialists for each integration? So there's so many different considerations when ultimately everything can be under one roof and it's modular. So it's built within the same system. It's a similar cost. It's compatible with all EVM chains. And so we really are trying to make the experience itself of integrating Web3 more accessible and easier than ever before in a way that's not overwhelmingly complex. And so that's kind of the value prop. We're simplifying Web3 for Web3 newbies or like novel users, but also people who have been embedded into the space for a while. And you can have fun with it depending on your flavor.
Nice. So how did you get here? Like, how did you get involved in the Web3 space? What brought you in? Were you interested first in gaming and then dived into the Web3 side, or the other way around?
I mean, I like to say that it was a happy accident. I think, my background and expertise is actually in brand building and product marketing and starting startups. So that's what I have my degree in. And back in, I want to say 2017, I had always been interested in emerging tech and this new crazy thing, blockchain, hit the streets of Cape Town in South Africa, which is where I'm originally from. And at that time, it was pretty much about like remittances and cross-border payments. Like that was the topic here in Cape Town in South Africa. And I got my first job at a local startup here, and I was their first hire. And I knew nothing really about the tech back in 2017. And I was just like, learn. And as the first hire, I had the pleasure of helping build an amazing team for an amazing company that eventually had spun into a dev studio. And I became the marketing manager, not only of the parent company, but also the subsequent products. And so I had a lot of exposure to a lot of different versions of Web3 from an early standpoint, but it was always community first. And that was my first interaction with blockchain technology. I did move out of the space slightly when I went to Germany and I worked for a venture studio. So really understanding what it takes to launch startups and what success looks like on both a Web 2 and a Web 3 perspective, and how can we like merge that. And once I understood what that process looks like, really learning and taking 2 years to gain a different kind of perspective of expertise, went back into the blockchain space and worked at an R&D firm in Berlin, ChainSafe. It's like an infrastructure company. And when you feel like something's a well-oiled machine and it just works and you need the next big challenge, I'm one of those people that like thrive with high blood pressure and things need to be chaos, which is the Web3 space, which is a gaming space.
Exactly.
And I found Sequence, and I've always been a passionate gamer. I mean, I had my Game Boy Color when I was baby, and have always kept up with gaming and have loved it. And it just felt like the next logical step to merge something that I am an expert in, marketing, merge something that I like and have learned a lot about, Web3 tech, and something I have a hobby and a passion for, gaming. So it's that trifecta of it. It's a good relationship. So it makes sense.
That's for sure. You mentioned pretty much the fast-paced, high blood pressure environment of Web3 gaming. Would you say, just based on your character traits, really, that you prefer pretty much the early stage rather than the mature stage of, okay, now things are running and that's a bit boring, really, because I kind of share that perspective in a way, and I was intrigued to see.
No one's ever asked me that, so that's a really good question. I think I'm gonna give you a political answer here. I'm going to say both, but for different reasons. I love early stage because it's a risk. You have to be willing to risk it, and you have to try these strategies. There is no blueprint. Sure, there's a rough guideline and there's what we think will work, but you have to put your blood, sweat, and tears and hours and weekends and, random stuff that you never thought of, you have to put into building a startup. And I love the excitement and the uncertainty of that, and the thrill of launching something new. But when it becomes more established, people often think that becomes boring. And maybe it does for certain people, because the things that you could use when the project was like first starting out, it's not going to work when you're established. The challenge, and where I think the thrill comes into for later stage gaming projects, later stage like Web3 projects, is you've got to start to think out of the box, and you've got to constantly keep up to date with your competitors, looking at what they're doing and how you can do it differently in a way that is actually going to be memorable and impactful. So this is like maybe a controversial topic, and I would love to know, because I have mixed opinions, but which side of the spectrum do you have to be more creative for a new project entering the space, or for an established project that needs to maintain its, leadership status? So yeah, that's it. I like them both for different reasons.
Yeah, for sure. I think that like the fast-paced the fast-paced nature of the space itself.
Yeah.
Really, also like the mature projects are also pretty much surrounded in chaos either way. So I think anyone
for sure.
who thrives under those conditions
with more red tape for sure.
Yeah. I think it's if you enjoy the chaos and you enjoy the fast-paced nature, even working in an established brand for Web3 or gaming is will probably do you right.
Exactly. No day is ever going to be the same, and isn't that exciting? No day is ever the same.
That's fun. That's for sure fun. So Sequence is built to help, I would say, just game developers with the Web3 aspects of like game development. Mm-hmm. Can you dive a bit deeper to how that like actually works? Like how does that play out?
Yeah, for sure. I think even before that, like before I talk a little bit about what Sequence aims to solve, it's really important for everyone to understand where the current game development industry is right now. And it's no secret, game development is tough. It's hard and it's challenging, and it's, it taps into that bit of your soul that you didn't know you needed to just have as a support mechanism. And I'm going to just if I look to the side, there's 4 little stats that I wanted to bring up for this specific part of the discussion, because I think it's so important for people to understand why game development is so difficult. And so we're looking at more than 70% of current gaming projects are unprofitable. And that number is only going up. And that's a huge percentage. That's monumental, and it's scary. And it's, if you look at startups, it's the 90-10%, usually 90% fail, 10% work. It's no different for our industry. And there's about a 15 to 20% increase in development costs of creating a new game. So creating, maintaining, and developing, which again is a significant portion of resources, right? Especially if you're relying on investment and you have to double down on ROI and show, whoever believes in your project, what the roadmap is and, when milestones will be achieved. The other thing, yeah, exactly. And this is the crazy stat that I'm going to tell you now. Since 2019, UA costs for games, for a game to acquire new players, has gone up 431%. That's insane. A ridiculous number to think about. And the last figure is that, think about that 431, only just 1% of players are spending money. And that's a stat that's come from 2020, I believe. And you can see the discrepancy, the gap between acquiring new users and generating revenue from them is monumental. So now that we understand the challenges, which there are a ton more, but development costs, UA, retention, and monetization clearly are huge factors. Where Sequence comes in is we've kind of looked at those 4 challenges and packaged them as, we know this is an issue. The industry knows this is an issue. Game devs know this is an issue. So we are going to focus on onboarding. We are going to focus on monetization strategies, and we're going to focus on retention, amongst other things, obviously. But our tools are so specific to tackle these challenges in a way that lowers UA costs, that lowers and shortens development time, that makes onboarding easy and fun, so there's lower churn. So we're really tackling industry-wide problems or challenges in a way that's literally a packaged solution. So yeah, I just wanted to give a bit of context to how that came about.
Yeah, that's very helpful.
Cool.
So in terms of, let me try to unpack maybe even one by one. I think that the UA debate is the most interesting one. We had Cam here, the founder of Fableborn.
Awesome.
Pretty much are the same, in terms of the power of your dollar spend in the traditional Facebook, Google, whatever is just it's decreasing every single year substantially. and them exploring, like part of them exploring like Web3 and trying to go that route is also to tackle this issue, because indie developers now, like the survivability rate is close to none because you need like 60 million in order to
Easily,
like
yeah.
survive the first 2 years, and then later maybe in the second year or third year become profitable, which is insane. How are you tackling the UA issue or just the UA problem?
For sure. I think, even though we positioned each of the packages as basically separate components, like your onboard, your monetization, and your retention, they're all linked. And so a feature or a, product adoption of one kind of funnels into the next package. So UA for us, we have really focused a lot on the onboarding portion of a Web3 game development project, because through many, many years of working in the space and also user feedback and partner feedback, highest drop off is when people can't play the game right from the get-go. If the onboarding experience is, I don't know if I can say shit, but if the onboarding experience is bad and terrible and, takes away from gameplay and time to fun, do you think they're going to come back? Do you think that user will try again?
Yeah.
Not unless there's an incentive. So we have something that's amazing, and it's called embedded wallets. And we basically give it to a game. It's a white label onboarding solution that they can brand. It's a login button. You can do it with social login. You can do it with PlayFab, Stitch, anything else. You can do it with existing like guest accounts. You can do it with email, or whatever is the easiest avenue for people to experience your project should be the solution, one that's trusted and credible and, has a good reputation and provable success. Use that as your partner, your solution provider. And so onboarding for us is incredibly important. And we've also got other solutions like our sequence kit and wallet linking. So if you have other wallets and you are familiar with the Web3 space, you can link your MetaMask, you can link your Rainbow. So onboarding, I'd say, is massive. And then we've got a couple of cool products coming out in a couple months that we'll start to like tease. We'll start to tease to really take this onboarding, take this UA to the next level. But I think one thing that I'd like to express as well, from the day that a project starts to think about UA, you should start thinking about retaining or retention, because once you've acquired them, you can't just let that communication, you can't let that progress end right there. So make sure you're thinking 3 steps ahead while you're prioritizing step 1.
Nice. Something that I think we discussed shortly with other guests, but I think you're probably the best guest to dive a little bit deeper with is account abstraction, which is something that is like a very hyped, I would say, term really in the industry. But I think you're like what you're doing in sequence. I think you can speak to it with more expertise, really. So,
For sure.
What and how really do you approach account abstraction from the sequence end?
That's a very interesting question, because if you look at the composition of our team, right, a lot of what makes sequence are these amazing, wonderful people that are Web3 natives. But we've also got Web2 folk who are in design or in game development or in business. So internally, we've got to mix that jargon, we've got to mix that understanding that already within our own organization. And so I like to think of it as a test run. Whenever we have various audience types and personas, you have it within your own company a lot of the time. Use them as not a guinea pig, but like a trial test run.
Not a guinea pig, but kind of a guinea pig.
Exactly. And so with things like account abstraction, it really, like for me, because there's a couple of us that do a lot of public facing things, and it really depends on the audience type that you're talking to. So we position Sequence as one of the pioneers of account abstraction because we did co-author and author a lot of the standards. And that is such a huge draw and pull factor and gives us as a company an additional layer of credibility for people who are deep in the Web3 space because they know how much time, research, energy, and what a significant step for the industry to have something like that published and leveraged. And all of the other co-authors on these pieces of research or papers, that makes a lot of sense. And we can talk in a more niche way for Web3 users because it makes sense already. They're deeply ingrained. When I'm talking about account abstraction to, a game developer who isn't in this space, does the word account abstraction mean anything to them? And this is going to sound a little bit strange, but I'm one of those people who try to explain things through use cases and metaphors. So I'm gonna use a metaphor here, and it's gonna be wild, but let's just roll with it. Okay, do you know that purple vegetable? I think you might call it an aubergine, right? Do you call it an aubergine or an eggplant?
Yeah.
Okay, so some people call it eggplant, some people call it aubergine, but I'm from South Africa, and yes, we call it both of those things, but we call it something else. We call it a brinjal. Okay, so this one thing is called three different things depending on where you are and who you're speaking to. It means the same. It means the same thing. But ultimately, you've got to know who you're speaking to, because if I say brinjal to you and not explain what it is, you're going to have no idea. You're going to think I'm talking gibberish. And I think it's all contextual. You have to know who you're talking to, where they're coming from, what are they used to, what kind of standards, processes, and definitions, and then meet them where they're at. So for me, it's all about explaining concepts through use cases. And the easiest way to do that is be succinct, be to the point. This is the challenge. This is what Sequence does. This is how account abstraction is solving it. And this is how you benefit. And we can go more technical on the Web3 front, and we can go more specific to the needs of the business for a Web2 company. So it's really just about knowing your audience.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It does make a lot of sense. In terms of your target market or your clients, like, is it more indie developers? Is it more like big studios? Is it a mix of the two? Like, how does that look like?
Percentage-wise, I think it's that's a difficult one to actually equate it percentage-wise, but it's definitely across the board. We work with indie projects, indie devs, all the way through to AAAs, publishers, big brand names. We're working with Ubisoft with like Champions Tactics, and obviously Captain Laserhawk, which was announced about a month or two ago. So we kind of have to be malleable and focus on the different needs of both indie, small to medium size enterprises, AAAs, publishers, and then large enterprises. And that in and of itself has different strategies to market and grow each of our partners. Yeah, exactly. It's not one size fits all, unfortunately.
Yeah, but let's try to get someone, not necessarily one. Let's explore pretty much the marketing tactics that you are utilizing, because I think not just you utilizing in order to get Sequence more clients, but also, let's say, recommending the people that you're working with. So what would you say are some of the most effective marketing strategies for developers potentially working on a tight budget, independent team, small team, trying to build a community? don't necessarily have the big budget to now close 8 different streamers. So what would you recommend them do?
I mean, this is like second language at this point, because a lot of our partners are in this position. So there's a couple of strategies, and like I said, there's no blueprint that is automatically going to make it successful, but there's a roadmap and a checklist that we can follow, that we can use as a benchmark, and then take it as a first attempt, experiment, and take learnings and iterate on that. So I'm a big, like, let's experiment and use data to prove where we started from to where we want to be, and what worked well and what didn't. So I guess on a limited budget, firstly, partner with a really good company. Partner with a really good company who is willing and able to pool resources. And I don't just mean like monetary or financial, I mean everything else. The support with the community building. I mean marketing. I mean BD. I mean word of mouth. I mean supporting you at events, ambassadors, introductions. There's so many different facets of what partnership means, more than an integration, more than an infrastructure provider. There's all the additional benefits that are behind the scenes. In addition to that, building a community on a budget, there's a couple of tactics here. And another interesting point that I think a lot of people get wrong is that new projects think that they need to build a community. You don't need to build a new community. A community already exists. You need to know how to tap into it, and you need to know how to leverage people who make sense and fit your target demographic or your target user persona or your, roadmap, instead of trying to make up the perfect person or group that already exists, that you don't need to start again. Don't reinvent the wheel. So my job a lot of the time is helping people tap into existing communities in a way that makes sense, instead of building communities from scratch. And I think that that's an interesting point that a lot of projects need to realize, is you're putting a ton of effort into creating something new rather than tapping into something existing. And early stage projects, it sounds so simple and so basic, but a community wants you to build with them in mind. Sharing behind the scenes, devlog changes, share, concept designs, get their feedback, get their input. You have people that are so keen and eager to share their opinions, especially in Web3 gaming.
Yeah, for sure.
Ask the community. There's people waiting there that are so excited. And if you can actually show that you're building with them in mind, which you should be already, but if you can show them that, and there's provability across different platforms, that's amazing. And I think it really helps in relationship building and making your brand or your project more humanized or personal than something that's just there to make money. And also, sorry, I completely forgot. There's so many other external platforms like itch.io and IndieDB. Just start putting your project out there. Start getting feedback. Get people talking about it. Even if, it's not complete. People love a work in progress. It's more interesting than something that's perfect.
That's for sure. I think that this space has a lot of people who are vocal and very much
for sure
into expressing their opinion on stuff that are in the work. It's really just balancing, I think, kind of the fear of sharing something that isn't necessarily finished or polished or whatever, and understanding that that's where the edge really comes from if you want people to really care.
Yeah.
Because if you're sharing something that's polished, it's very difficult to give feedback. So
100%. There's an element of, especially for founders and the people that have actually created this project, the intense backbone and thick skin that you need to launch a project, get feedback, and to allow yourself and your team and everything else to be vulnerable. There's such a huge emotional tie that we don't talk about really, but it's this big scary monster that I think there's a lot of people cheering you on from the sidelines and less people just starting nonsense online. And I promise you, be kind, make meaningful connections, and you will have cheerleaders and people advocating for your success and helping you out way more than you'll have haters. It's worth it.
That's something that we've talked about internally, really. But like the human nature is to identify risks. So
for sure,
like 2 bad comments and 90 good comments, you would only remember the 2 bad ones, because that's how we're programmed. Like that's like we're seeing something flashes quickly in the background, we're thinking that's possibly a lion coming to kill me. That's our biology.
Oh, for sure. So it's survival. It's survival instinct.
Yeah. And I think that understanding that helps reframing the negative emotions.
It's like at survival instinct, there's a huge like emotional aspect of launching a game. And I think, exactly what you were saying, it's so interesting that but it's not spoken about. It's not spoken about like the emotional brevity and scariness of it's not cool to talk about, but it should be. I love this kind of stuff. And somebody actually said something to me, you've got to trust yourself and you've got to trust your project. And it's a quote, so I might butcher the quote, but I said, I'm so anxious a lot of the time to put my ideas out there, even though I know that they're going to be received well. I know that if I get constructive feedback, it's to help me better myself or better my project. But the saying or the quote is, trust is a risk masquerading itself around as a promise. So that like really resonated with me, because you've got to trust your community, you've got to trust your team, you've got to trust everyone, and you've got to hope that with the best intentions and the best support and the best community, that trust, which is a risk, is going to ultimately be what they promised for you to do and to support. So it was really a nice piece of like, let me think about it for a while.
Yeah. Also, like the fact that you might be scared to share something, an idea, a development, a project, whatever, that's the opportunity to be brave. Like being brave is doing something with pretty much those negative emotions, not trying to completely avoid them. So also like reframing that helped me.
Oh, for sure. It's all about reframing, and I think this is the year, at least for me, let's call it the reframe and experiment year, because we need to try new things and we need to be new things. But being a voice and being a point of reference for people who are or projects that are a little bit too anxious to do that, and showing that there are people and figureheads like you, or hopefully me in some way and other people in the space, it shows that there is a community of people that are just like you and are also needing your support and community to help build a stronger version of not only personal brands, but projects. So yeah, I think being the voice for people that aren't ready yet is very cool.
Like most of us, like all of us really, are at times unsure, at times scared, at times like trying to do something without necessarily knowing that it's going to work, and just trying it out. And I think the entire space shares a lot of it. So you've been involved in like the growth and partnership space, let's call it, for years now.
Yeah.
How have you helped partners succeed, and what would you say is like the quote unquote secret to building a strong collaboration?
Are you coming after my job if I give away secrets? Nah, I think it's such an interesting space. Like especially for marketers or people that are public facing. So that's like BD or growth or, a couple of other people. I look at who I am and I see my job as 3 different verticals. So I look and I see marketing, I see Web3, and I see gaming. And I always think, okay, there's so much to learn on the marketing funnel. I have to constantly try and keep up to date there. But as soon as I get like 3 steps forward, my knowledge in like Web3 has dropped. So now I've got to focus on that. Marketing starts to go, gaming starts to go. And that in and of itself is such a challenge as an individual, but also as a community, because there's many Megans at different projects going through the exact same thing. And what might be successful for me, they might have a different strategy. But my biggest piece of advice: be adaptable, be flexible. You might have to sharpen up your marketing before you do Web3, depending on the project, depending on the timeline, depending on your own personal company roadmap, or gaming tactics. Funnel and be adaptable to the needs that are now, whilst like future-proofing your knowledge and skills for when they're needed later. So it's really about management and like resource management as well. Not only that, it's be malleable in your abilities. And what I mean by that is we're in such a funny and unique position that, Megs, me, myself, and I have to be considerate about, okay, where's the company? Where's Sequence right now? Where do we want to be? How do we get there? Partners are coming to me saying, this is where we are now. This is where we want to be. And we need the support of Sequence. And so finding that sweet spot of meeting our goals internally and meeting the goals of a partner and moving the needle forward is being adaptable. It's being flexible and changing as both organizations grow. So I think that's a big one. Another interesting point that I think a lot of like growth marketers will agree with me: avoid the one and done partnerships. People do not care if it's just one blog post. We have to keep it going. And something that I'm trying to like advocate for, because there's amazing Web3 growth groups, especially around gaming. There's a big debate going on online right now about what does a Web3 partnership actually mean? Because more often than not, it hasn't even been integrated. And so working with partnerships, I'm trying really deeply to make sure that every time we have a partnership announcement, there is a clear USP, a unique selling point that people understand, okay, why have these 2 companies partnered? Or why is this game using Sequence? Have they integrated? Yes. What is the benefit and how is it going to benefit me as a developer or benefit me as a player? So be clear, succinct, concise. Do not be ambiguous. Make sure it's not a one and done. If you're going to do a partnership announcement or you're going to do a campaign, make sure that it lasts longer than just a day or just a week. Revisit it every month or 3 months and check in and make progress and milestone reports. It's very cool and very necessary.
Yeah, I think building those relationships long term makes a lot of sense, rather than just keeping them short term. So in terms of just I think now it's better, but in the past it felt like a lot of people a lot of projects, or the space in general, was kind of obsessed with quote unquote success metrics, which were really more vanity metrics than anything else. What would you say from your perspective is the metrics that developers should focus on, both with building their project and building their community?
Okay, I'm gonna keep it succinct. And I'm only gonna keep it to 3. Although there's so many and I could speak for days, but I'm gonna keep it to 3. Focus on your onboarding. UA is 1. User acquisition is your whole entire flesh, meat, and bones. It's your skeleton. Second, I would say it's a mixture of product adoption, feature response, and that in and of itself speaks to monetization potential. So it's UA, monetization, and third would be growth retention. So out of those users that you first acquired, how are you retaining them? What's the drop-off rate, the churn? So UA, monetization, retention.
Which pretty much tells the story of will you survive?
Exactly. So got to keep it, like I said, just keep it succinct. Tell them what they need to know in bullet points.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. We're almost on time, so I want to make sure that we're providing even more value really to developers, because I think that's the most interesting piece of this particular conversation. I'm sure we will have another one that will probably focus on other stuff. But since we're already on the topic of developers, for both, not only game developers, but entrepreneurs, really, it could be just the CEO, the COO, whatever, that are trying to navigate this Web3 space. And we're seeing some people coming in from Web2, some smaller teams, some bigger teams. What advice would you give in terms of just balancing, let's say, the creativity with the technology and the community engagement side of things, which is kind of different from Web2?
Layered question, but very good. I think
some of them.
Yeah. No. This I always enjoy this because it exactly fits into what I was saying about community. You do not need to build your own community, tap into what already exists. In terms of advice for developers, especially indie devs or projects that need to really maximize their resources at their current stage, look at what's already out there. Look at what's being done well. Look at your competitors. Look at who you want to aspire to be. Look at like your inspiration. Look at who's doing it well. Take those learnings, spin it around, make it your own, put your unique spin on it, or do it better. But you don't have to start from point zero. There is so much to draw on from that I think we forget that in order to be successful, we have to be totally unique. And that's not it. We just have to be better than what already exists. And so that would be a piece of advice. Another piece of advice is, depending on the nature of your project, I think lots of people are eager to integrate Web3 in a way, especially organizations, in a way that's more like innovation related rather than specific needs driven. And players can tell when blockchain tech has just been slapped onto it, and it makes the gameplay terrible. It makes it not fun, makes it disruptive. And so my advice would be, integrate Web3 in a way that's invisible to the end player. Integrate it so that it benefits the experience and doesn't take away with the complexity of integration or the complexity of the technology itself. A lot of the time, we just want players to play a game without knowing that they're actually leveraging this amazing, cool technology. And so I would also say, gaming, Web3 gaming specifically, leverages an exciting place in my heart and in the hearts of the community, because people are driven by incentives a lot of the time. And we have an epic opportunity to gamify and make immersive experiences where people really get to test things out from day one and use things like use your community, use questing platforms, get feedback early on. There are so many different tactics that will work to your benefit. It's all about prioritizing them and being authentic in how you want to be portrayed. So it's like a balancing act. You've got to learn to juggle.
That makes a lot of sense. So you mentioned like tapping into an existing community. How? How can one like tap into an existing community?
Cool. So I mean, depending on where you are on the spectrum of like, or the scale of who you are. So for me, I'm sequence. So I get developers, I get creators, I get so many different avenues. So I've got to think about 5 different people. And one tactic that I've leveraged that worked really, really well, and that I'm trying to figure out a way to make a blueprint or a checklist about. So this is some Megan Alpha for the recording. It's
nice.
Cross-pollination tactics. And yes, we've tried it before. Yes, we've done it before. But cross-pollination is going to be one of the biggest merging of communities across different projects. And what I've done in the past is taken, a game like Skyweaver and taken a game like, I'm just using 2, for example, Boomland. They have 2 different gamer groups. They're 2 different types of games. But ultimately, majority of those players are Web3 first. And we know that because we understand the user profiles. So why not incentivize those 2 different communities to cross-pollinate? How can we do that? Incentives. So why don't we do something like the first 1,000 players from Game A, Boomland, that play Skyweaver, and the first 1,000 players that play Boomland from Skyweaver, leveraging sequence, get an asset swap. Or they get, a loot box, or they get something so native and interesting, because we can actually track like the value of a specific user on one project and incentivize them to move to another. And it's all about cross-pollination, which I think is going to be super important. And there is a way to do it without making a loss on, giving away assets as well. I'm just saying that because that's one of the most quick wins. But yeah, cross-pollination, I would say, is going to be the merging of communities. And I'm excited to share some ideas more publicly when I've got it on paper.
Nice. Really like it. Okay.
Awesome.
Well, we're on time, unfortunately. So
awesome. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been really good. And I think this one was pretty much all I wanted it to be, really, which is more developer focused and more about the ins and outs of building both the game itself and the community. We didn't have the chance to touch on everything that we wanted, but that's
absolutely. Well, you're going to have me back, so it's fine.
Exactly. So we'll have to have you back.
Have a part 2.
Might have been planned. Like I can't really share my secrets, but yeah. So thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for your expertise, your knowledge. I think this one is going to be very valuable to a very big and important crowd of people.
I hope so. And thank you so much for putting this together. And thank you for the opportunity and sharing knowledge and mentoring. And I appreciate it so much. And I will be back anytime you want me to be.
Nice. Love it. So where can they find you? They can find you on where do you want to plug yourself?
Twitter, LinkedIn. So it's just Megan Doyle on LinkedIn, very stock standard full name. And then on X, Twitter, you guys can find me at Meg, so MEGG, so double G, _ Doyle. And I'm on Twitter or X. We can talk about branding, reputation, how that went next time. Next time. And then for sequence.xyz, check it out. We've got all the links to our social media profiles, and on X, Twitter, it's 0x at sequence. So, thank you very, very, very much.
Thank you very much. And obviously, thank you for everyone for tuning in, following, liking, subscribing, retweeting, whatever you might be doing, because now we're putting the full episodes on X as well per your requests. And it seems to be pretty much the main channel now for the show, which wasn't expected, but now it is.
Nice.
So thank you very much, everyone. And we'll catch you on the next one. Bye.
Bye.